Welcome to Sidequests, the podcast that explores the strange, surprising, and often forgotten rabbit holes of history. Because sometimes history isn't what happens when people are trying to change the world, it's what happened when the world was making other plans. Imagine waking up in June, looking out your window, and seeing a blanket of snow. The fields are frozen, the crops are dead, and no one, not the farmers, not the scientists, not the priests, can explain what's happening. In 1816, across Europe and North America, summer simply didn't show up. It wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a global climate disaster, one triggered not by anything on Earth, but beneath it. In the skies above, the sun dimmed, temperatures dropped, and panic began to spread. The world teetered between hunger and hysteria, and in a dark villa on the edge of a cold lake, a few poets stuck indoors would create a monster of their own. Today, we're pulling back the ash cloud on one of the strangest years in modern history. A year when volcanoes silenced the summer and humanity scrambled to find warmth in the chill. This is the story of the year without a summer. It all starts on a small Indonesian island you've probably never heard of. In April 1815, on the island of Sumbawa, a mountain named Tambora exploded. Not just erupted, exploded. Mount Tambora produced the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded human history. The explosion was heard over 1,200 miles away. The top of the mountain disappeared, blasted into the sky, and the surrounding landscape was scorched, buried, and drowned in lava and ash. Tens of thousands of people were killed almost instantly. More would die in the weeks to follow, of starvation, displacement, and disease. But Tambora's biggest impact wasn't local. It was atmospheric. The eruption released an unfathomable amount of ash, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter into the stratosphere, tens of millions of tons. High above the Earth, these particles formed a global veil, a hazy screen that reflected sunlight back into space. And while the eruption happened in 1815, the world didn't fully feel its effects until the following year. Because volcanoes don't just explode, they linger. The sun dimmed, temperatures dropped, and all over the planet, the weather began to get weird. In the months that followed, orange sunsets, hazy skies, and freak storms were reported from China to North America. But in 1816, it became clear this wasn't a passing fluke. This was a global climate event, a sudden cooling sometimes called a volcanic winter. And it didn't just chill the air, it chilled economies, sparked migrations, inspired ghost stories, and terrified people who thought the sky itself had turned against them. The worst part? Nobody knew why. There were no satellite images back then, no atmospheric models. Most people had never even heard of Mount Tambora. All they knew was that the seasons had broken, and they were about to face a summer unlike any other. By the spring of 1816, the world was already off kilter, but when June rolled around, things got stranger. In New England, farmers woke up to find their fields covered in frost. Not just one night, but night after night. Snow fell in parts of Vermont and New Hampshire in June. People called it the poverty year. Some, more poetically, dubbed it 1800 and froze to death. Crops were planted and failed, replanted and failed again. By July, desperate farmers tried to salvage what they could, only to see ice form on standing water and killing frosts hit at the height of summer. Corn, wheat, oats withered. Livestock starved or were sold off for pennies. Families went hungry. Across the Atlantic, Europe fared no better. In Switzerland, France, and Germany, persistent cold and rain devastated the harvest. In Ireland, famine took hold. There were food riots in the streets. Grain prices soared and entire communities faced starvation. Some scholars estimate that global temperatures dropped by 1 to 3 degrees Celsius, which doesn't sound like much, until you realize that even a slight dip in average temperature can collapse an agricultural system. People were confused, terrified. In an era without meteorology or mass communication, the sudden shift felt like divine punishment or maybe the end of the world. In North America, the crisis helped trigger one of the first major waves of westward migration. Tens of thousands of people left New England for the more temperate Midwest, reshaping the map of American settlement. Religious revivals surged, so did apocalyptic predictions. As the months dragged on, the summer that never was became a kind of mass trauma. unifying people across continents in shared confusion, hunger, and cold. Even by August, normally the warmest month of the year, temperatures were well below normal. Frosts persisted. The sun, when it appeared at all, seemed pale and weak, a ghost of itself. By fall, many had simply given up on 1816. But amid the gloom, something strange stirred. Stories, science, and a few unexpected inventions born of frostbitten necessity. The year without a summer didn't just freeze crops and rattle economies. It crept into culture, imagination, and invention. Let's start by the fire, literally. In the summer of 1816, a group of young writers and aristocrats rented a villa on the shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Among them, Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, who would soon become Mary Shelley. They had hoped for hiking, boating, and sunshine. Instead, they got a gray, cold, and dismal summer. Trapped indoors by unrelenting storms, they turned to ghost stories to pass the time. Byron proposed a challenge. Everyone should write a terrifying tale. One guest wrote a story about a man who turned himself into a vampire. Another, Mary Shelley, began sketching out a novel about a scientist who creates life from death. Yes, Frankenstein was born during the worst summer in history. But it wasn't all monsters and poetry. There were also oats. Crop failures meant horse feed became scarce. In Germany, Baron Karl von Drais began looking for a horse alternative. His solution? A strange two-wheeled invention powered by foot. No reins, no saddle, just a seat, two wheels, and a way to keep moving. He called it the Lauf machine, or running machine. The world would later call it the bicycle. A monster in Switzerland, a bike in Bavaria, all born because the horses were hungry and the skies wouldn't clear. There were also scientific consequences. Though no one understood climate systems in 1816, natural philosophers began to suspect that volcanoes and weather might be connected. It would take decades, but the year without a summer planted seeds of climate science, meteorology, and global awareness that weather might be a little more interconnected than previously thought. And for ordinary people, the strangeness stuck. For years afterward, 1816 was shorthand for apocalypse light, a warning about what happens when nature tips the balance and the sun forgets to show up. The year without a summer reminds us that history isn't just shaped by kings and wars. Sometimes it's shaped by a mountain halfway around the world that decided to explode. It was a year of fear and famine, yes, but also a year of innovation, imagination, and odd little pivots that ripple through time. A volcano burps, the sky darkens, and somehow we end up with Frankenstein and bicycles. That's it for today's Sidequest. If you enjoyed the detour, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves history's odd corners. And the next time summer feels too hot, remember, there was once a year when people prayed for a warm breeze and got frostbite in August instead. This has been Sidequests, because history is what happens when the world is making other plans.